welcome. My name is Tiffany, and welcome to Tiffany Talks. Today, we are going to have an episode on talking about transformative stories, where we're talking about stories where there was the journey before, during the journey, and then after the journey, and what inspired you through the journey. So that's what this show is going to be about. And today we have a wonderful guest here. I'm so excited to talk to this person. Super excited. We actually have two guests, so I'm super excited about that. But today we're going to first talk to Mr. Antong Lucky. Antong Lucky is the author of Redemptive Path Forward. This is his book. Make sure you guys go and purchase this. It's in the description of where you can purchase this book. So, welcome, first of all. And I'm just going to break a little nerve. I'm a little nervous. Okay, it's been a minute since I've been doing this. But I do love this. This is what I love to do. This is my passion. And I want to talk today about your passion. I want to talk about your journey before. How did you get to this? Where did you all come together with this actual story? And then, the biggest thing is for me in your story, I met Antong on the elevator. Okay, I met him on the elevator. I just talk to everybody like I do. I'm a very outspoken people's person. And I met him on the elevator and I seen him. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, that's you on that book. And then he was telling me about his story, and it was so inspiring to me how you took a situation that you went through and you actually turned it into this. A lot of people can do this. Okay. So please tell me where you were before your actual journey of your incarceration. Like, where was your mindset at?
Man, first of all, Tiffany, I got to just thank you for having me on the show, because we did meet in the elevator. And she said, what book you reading? And it was me on the cover. But yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. My journey before incarceration, where I was at.
Yes.
I grew up here in Dallas.
Okay.
Right. Grew up here in South Dallas, East Dallas. Let me say East Dallas, because the locals will get very offended if I say South Dallas. Grew up in East Dallas. My father was sentenced to prison when I was 9 months.
Okay.
And ultimately did 37 years out of my life. My mother was then focused on work. She closed that chapter. I placed all of my talents in the school.
Okay.
So I became an honor roll student, a straight A student, talented and gifted student, and I loved everything about it.
Okay.
My grandparents became my primary caretakers. They were the ones who would encourage me. My grades, straight A. I was a favorite of all of their grandkids, and I knew I was a favorite.
I know what that feels like.
Yes. So any of my cousins watching this, I was the favorite because I got to sleep in the bed with them, and y'all slept in the back room. So I was the favorite. And I love their praises, but no amount of praises could stop what I dealt with when I left out the house or when I left out the school. Okay. In my neighborhood was a tough neighborhood, very tough neighborhood, where the whole idea was survival. Like, you had to be tough. And so as much as I love good grades, love all that stuff, I had to confront this reality every day that I came out. So going to school for me was considered two things. Okay. How fast I can run, how hard I can fight, because my school was in another neighborhood. And then just at that time, man, it's just kids, they was just mean. And these kids had already identified with a certain gang, right? Okay. My neighborhood didn't have no identity. But we would just fight these dudes regularly, every day, right? And so at some point, and I remember when I amputated my personality and said I got to be what this neighborhood said I had to be if I wanted to survive. And so my grades began to drop, and I put my whole focus on surviving in this tough, rough neighborhood. And I remember, Tiffany, even back then, there were no efforts like mentorship, positive black males that reached kids like me who was in the hood. Like, I grew up in the projects. And so, in the projects where these projects, if you didn't know anybody, you didn't come up and you come in. Right. So as a result, any efforts, any positive role, none of that happened. Okay. I'm quite sure it was some, but it didn't reach me. Yeah. And everything that we saw in the neighborhood was all of the pimps, the drug dealers, the hustlers.
That's what we looked up to in that time.
That's what we looked up to. And so I remember amputating my personality and becoming that. Right. I started the first blood gang here in Dallas. Yeah. Not nothing I'm proud of, but it happened because these kids will always fight us, right? And they was Crips.
Right.
And so I remember vividly when the movie Colors came out, and we saw that, and we said naturally, intuitively, like, we're gonna be Bloods, and we're gonna be the most ruthless, feared gang in the city. And we were kids, man. And I remember a dual idea that I had too, because I remember also that although we were emulating that, for me, and I can't speak for the rest of my friends, for me, I knew even then as a teenager that I was putting on something, that it wasn't who I was. Because I still had what my grandparents had imparted into me.
In you,
It was already instilled in me.
Yes.
But for most of my friends, when we started that gang, they took it to the heart. That became their identity. And they went our way out. I have a lot of friends who died, a lot of friends who are doing life in prison because they embraced it and ran with it. For me, I knew that I just put something on that wasn't who I really was. Wow. So that was my mentality prior to prison. Then ultimately, it led me. I remember my daughter. I was becoming a father. My daughter was born May 7th.
Okay.
And I was standing in front of a judge May 21st, expecting to start this journey of fatherhood, right? And I remember thinking, like, I didn't want to be to my daughter what my father was to me, like absent, right? Because regardless of why he was in prison, I felt the void of him not being there.
Yes,
you know?
That's a generational curse.
Exactly.
It goes from the dad to you to the son. Yeah.
Exactly. And so for me, standing in front of the judge who then says, you're a menace to society and you deserve to be in prison. And I remember sitting there, right, and it was like everything froze for me.
He said that to you?
He said, you're a menace to society, you belong in prison. And everything just went in slow motion. And I had a conversation in my head and it went like this. It was like, but Judge, you don't understand.
Did you feel like that though?
At all.
You did not?
I didn't feel like that at all.
You didn't feel like he was a menace to society?
I didn't feel like that at all.
Right.
And I don't think that title was warranted for me. I don't think I had done nothing to deserve that title. But I understand he's looking at me, and he's a white man, so I understand he's looking at me in the way that at that time white people looked at black people in the hood. So it was all like this one group. And so for me, my conversation was, but sir, you don't understand, like, that's not really who I am. Like, I grew up in East Dallas, it's tough over here, it's rough. You gotta be this to survive, but that's not really. But the conversation never came out of my mouth. And I remember as I was being led back to the holdover cell, I looked at my mother who was utterly disappointed, because she knew that wasn't who I was.
Right.
And I remember saying to myself that I wanted to understand, how did I go from an A honor roll student to a judge calling me a menace to society? I wanted to know that.
Yes.
I went into prison with that mindset. How do I unmask that? That's how I went into prison.
Wow. Wow. I feel like what you're saying is something that it's a stereotype thing, because like you said, you're in a situation where you have to be somebody that you don't want to be. Then when you get in trouble, you can't explain to them, like, look, this is where because I'm from the same, I grew up in the projects, a very rough neighborhood. I'm from North Philly.
Right.
So I know what it means to really be around that environment and see that. And like you said, that's what we looked up to. We looked up to the drug dealers and, that's who the women wanted to date. We didn't want to date the college kid or the corporate person. We wanted, it was just a fast life.
Right.
And it was just very entertaining. And to go into a courtroom, which to me, I consider as a corporate America, and kind of explain to them that they don't see that outside of that.
Right. And
that's what I wanted to kind of ask, with you being in the area of both of them, like coming from the street, But then understanding corporate America, what do you find that you learned in each of those areas? Like the streets, what did you learn? And then going into corporate, because now you're corporate. I'm just going to say it. You're corporate. You got your book. You out here, you doing your thing. So it's like, what did you learn in both of them? Because I feel like there is, and I'm kind of saying, I feel like there's something to learn in both of them. I worked in corporate America. I have a hospital background.
Right.
So I worked in that around surgeons and things like that. But I'm also from the street. So when I went to corporate America, it's like I had to put this face on. I had to do, so it's like in the mix of that, what did you learn from the streets versus the corporate America, and how did the two actually define you?
Yes. Okay, I can answer that. But I remember when I went into prison, what was a key turnaround for me, then I'm going to answer your question, was I had met this guy he was probably about 15 years older than me.
Okay.
He was a teacher in prison. And I was coming out the child hall, and because I went into prison as the leader of the Bloods, so they came with some clout, they came with, and so this brother.
I just want to say one thing. I do commend you for that.
Yeah.
And why I commend you for that, because to me, I don't take, like, even when I asked you about the Menace to Society, I don't take like what we do.
Yeah.
I don't take it as a thing of like, oh, you're wrong, you're bad at it. No, to be a leader of anything, to run anything, takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of balls. Not a lot of people could do what you did. So it's just, you know what I mean? I understand that a lot of lives could have been, affected or impacted by it. But at the same time, corporate America is the same thing. It's the same thing. There's a lot of people's lives on their deck as well too. So I just want to say that as well too.
Oh yeah, and you're absolutely correct, because what that brother said to me coming out the child hall in 1997 was this. He said, "Little brother," and I didn't know him. He said, "Little brother," he said, "Man, I've been paying attention to you. I've been watching you." He said, "Man, all these men in this prison are falling out of place to see you. They do whatever you ask to do. Wow. They paying homage to you." And then the next thing he said, because when he's saying that to me, I'm looking at him like, who he is? How he get this insight? Right. Because we're in prison. And so he said, "Little brother, if you can lead these men to do wrong, within you is the same ability to lead them to do right. You're a leader." And see, I had never heard those words before. And when he said that, right, it took me back, and I'm like, whoa. And then that brother ended up mentoring me, right? And so what I started, as he started to mentor me, and I started to read all his books.
Like,
it was interesting.
Like you're this boss, you're a leader, and then you have somebody mentor you. Was it different? Like, have you ever had anyone mentor you?
That was the first. I'm still shocked at the fact that I allowed him to.
Yeah,
that I allowed him to. Yeah, because I was like, wow. And then, but he opened my eyes, right? He opened my eyes to some stuff, right? Okay. And because I had to pay attention. Like, I was just so used to people like being gregarious and me want to be around, but I didn't pay attention to my influence on those people. I didn't catch that. I just thought it was normal. And so when he pointed that out to me, and then he started mentoring me, and I started reading. Like I read like over 1,500 books, And what I realized was how much I didn't know. I realized how much I didn't know about history, about our people, and I just started being very self-introspective, going back, looking at my life, seeing how I made choices. All that information was powerful. The knowledge was powerful.
It is. I love it. Yeah, I love it.
Immediately, I started to unlayer all those layers that I piled up the first 20 years of my life. I started looking at my cognitive distortions, because I had some. I had bought into some stuff, and I had started looking at that, and I started unlayering. And what I realized, Tiffany, was I denounced my gang in prison.
Wow.
That's something you don't do. I said, I'm no longer with it. They were trying to get me call shots. I said, I'm no longer with it. And then I began to educate myself, right? And I began to unlayer. And what I started realizing was society teaches us as men that we got to be masculine, we got to be tough, we got to be hard, we can't show no feelings, et cetera, et cetera. All the stuff that we bought into in the game. Yeah. But what I started realizing was true courage and true confidence came from when you're vulnerable. I started finding strength in the vulnerability. And so now here I'm leading.
Wait a minute, hold on, repeat that again.
Yes. I'm finding strength and vulnerability. I'm being the first of men, and as a leader, to talk about all the things that I was fearful about, all of this, talking about even just being able to say, man, I became a blood because I was watching colors. I emulated what I saw. You know, just being the person to say that.
Right.
It took courage, right? And it offended a lot of people, you know, who looked at me for this other type of leadership, right? And here I'm saying, we got to be men. We got to be accountable. We got to be responsible. We got to handle our business. We got kids that we left that's ultimately going to be in here because we not there in their lives. And this ideology of how we look at women and how we look at our neighborhood and the streets, that's the wrong ideology. So I'm in prison, right, saying this, in a maximum security prison with a number of gang members and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm saying that and I'm standing on it. And at first it was skepticism, you know. It was a lot of frustration to hear from a lot of brothers, but I was delivering a truth that they had never heard before. So I began to teach in prison. And so, Tiffany, it was funny because when I shared those distortions, I began to connect with everybody because I started seeing them as human beings. I started seeing us all as being manipulated by this system that drove us here. And so I felt like I was Paul Revere in the sense of saying the British coming. I'm saying, look, man, we got to wake up. We losing, right?
Right.
We really losing, and we in here thinking we win, and so I brought a lot of people together, who ultimately wouldn't be together, from different gangs, different sets, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw on a micro level that when we start speaking truth and standing on truth, that it unites us. You know what I'm saying? But it's about shattering those distortions.
Yes,
you know, you got to.
Yeah.
And see,
and what you mastered down was the plane of emotional intelligence, and that's where I feel like a lot of men they want the physical intelligence. You know, they want to get that stability. And, you know, they want to have that mental stability. So you know, it's 3 planes of existence for me. It's emotional, mental, and physical.
Yes, indeed.
But emotion is what a lot of the masculines kind of miss. It feels like you went through like a awakening, a spiritual awakening. You kind of realized a lot of things. You dropped a lot of delusion and illusion that you were living in. And this is where it brought you to.
It was exactly what you just described. It was that. And I'm gonna tell you something. I would see brothers in prison. I know these brothers didn't like me, right? They didn't like me because I'm delivering this truth. I'm talking about all of the idiosyncrasies that's happened in prison, you know, homosexual, all that stuff they were doing. I'm speaking on it strong. But I see a brother that didn't like me, and you know what I do? I walk up to him and give him some food here. But I had mine in my book so I could spread, right? And one thing I knew in prison was if you eating in that chow hall, you ain't gonna turn down no food. And so I have dudes. I know they mad at me. But I was breaking down those barriers because as men, you know, we can go into our macho mode when other men come around. So I had to be an example by even knowing when brothers have a misunderstanding about me. I had to just show them love. Because I realized our community suffer from LOL, which is a lack of love, and the only cure is LOL, which is a lot of love. So in prison, I'm giving a lot of love to everybody, indiscriminately. I'm giving a lot of love to everybody. And so in prison, I started teaching and leading, and before I know it, it was just like, bam, this is who I was.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I love that. It's very rare that you come across men such as yourself. And I feel like we need you. You know, we need you in the community when it comes to leading, like he said. If you can lead them to do this, then you can lead the men to do this. Because a lot of men are kind of missing that point there. How would you like define far as in like your connection when you came home, when you learned that love, that LOL, like you said, how would you have used that coming home? Like, what was the difference from there to here now?
It wasn't a big difference because when I came home, I met this brother. I got to give him a shot, Bishop Omar. He was the late great Bishop Omar. He passed away last year from COVID, but he was my free world mentor that I met. And me and his brother was so connected.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And he was doing the work he was doing the work that I wanted to do when I got out, right?
Okay.
And so when I went to him, when I met him, and his brother was one of the most smartest, gifted brothers I ever met in my life. You know, I felt like I walked with Dr. King. That's how important he was to my life.
Nice.
But I remember, man, coming to him and saying, when we first met, I said, brother, I want to go to my neighborhood. I want to do some love. I want to change the trajectory of these kids. I want to be the example. Da, 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 da. And the first thing he said to me was, let's go to your rival neighborhood. And I said, huh? I said, hold up, bro. I didn't think that far. I was talking about my neighborhood. I said, that's suicide. You talking about if them dudes see me, they will kill me, you know. But he convinced me. He convinced me to go into to my rival neighborhood dudes who I was shooting
that was
at.
Surrender.
Like shooting at for real.
Yeah.
And they were shooting at me. And I was in their neighborhood unarmed with him. And he looked like a college student. He, one of them, he didn't have no street swag. He was like 2 or 3 years older than me, but he was smart, man. He was a preacher's kid, man. But he was smart. He was one of the smart dudes. And we was in that neighborhood in these toe down apartments, one way in, one way out, knocking on this trap door. And I'm with him. Hot summer, right?
Right.
I ain't been out 2 months. And I remember, man, talking about love. I remember them dudes looked out the window and they seen me, and all you heard was feet rattling and guns cocking. And I remember saying, oh God.
Oh my God.
So in my year, I don't know Omar. So he said, put your hands up. He said, put your hands up. So we standing outside, me and him like this, right? And them dudes busted open the door, right? And they got their guns pointed. And I said, God, I know you didn't bring me this far. And so they like, what the hell are you doing over? And then he started talking. And man, I don't know this brother, but he started talking, right? And as he talking, and I'm talking about my mouth so dry, I can't even swallow. I'm just thinking like my life is for the end, right? I'd have went to prison, changed my life, want to get out of here, and now I'm finna die right now. And that brother went to talking, man. And as he was talking, I see the dudes were counting their guns were lowering, right? And I said, boy, keep talking, don't stop. And he kept talking, man. And them brothers end up allowed my rival end up becoming my brother, and allowed us passage in that neighborhood to begin working with those young people, because what we said in essence was we got too many young people dying and going to prison that we have to stop. Mothers are prematurely bearing their kids. And that appealed to them.
Right.
And we started doing that work, right? And I remember, to your question, a lot of those young brothers, it was that display of love, not partiality love, but just agape love for real, that allowed us to do the first peace treaty in Dallas, where we had 400 gang members sign a peace treaty. And that became the foundation of the work that we've been doing for the last 22 years.
Wow. That's not 400 people?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it took some work, but we got it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you believe that you had to go through what you went through in order to get to this point?
I think so. You couldn't have told me that back then.
Yeah.
Because again, I didn't want to go to the other neighborhood, but I'm so glad I did, because again, it became the foundation. Like even my prison experience, even though, you know, that experience, I learned so much about myself.
Right.
And so much about my purpose while in the belly of the beast. And my purpose, a country swing. But but I had to go through that. Like all of the stuff that I went through, even doing the work, because we started out neighborhoods, schools, juvenile departments. All that became my experience. You know, like you asked the question earlier, like corporate and streets. You know, in the streets, I had a triple OG told me a long time ago. He said, man, if you beat a wall with a spoon, it'll end up crumbling. He said, stay down till you come up. You know, whatever you take on, stick to it till you see some success, right? And that was even in the streets, when I was in the streets hustling, And I came home with that same mentality that he told me. As I began to do this work on the other side of the law, I just said I was gonna keep going. And it was a lot of times where, man, I was questioning it. I was about to quit. nobody didn't understand it, man. You want this positive stuff, man. Because the culture tell you differently.
Yeah.
And I was just so convinced that this was the right way. Me and Omar met, and we just had an idea.
Okay.
To now, when he passed, then I became the president of the company. We got $3.2 million budget. We got, I got staff members, probably 40 staff members working all across the country. But I say all that to say it started with just that belief that this is possible, that it can happen. And we never gave up, and we just stayed to it.
And a lot of people be afraid to live in their purpose.
And you have to.
Because, like you said, it be a little shady. I'm not shady, but skeptic.
Yes.
You be a little shaky.
Yeah.
That's what I'm like. And then I find that, like, even with myself, how nerve-wracking it could be to even just to do what you're called to actually do here. And it's like, it's out the norm, and people don't understand you.
You got to do it.
And it's just, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing through.
You got to do it.
Boy, when I tell you, when you get there, it's such a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
Good. It feels so good to just wake up every day and be like, wow.
It don't even feel like work.
It doesn't.
It don't even, when it get to the point that it don't feel like work, you have really arrived. And I'm going to say this because I remember when we were putting in the work, man, I used to always be, because I wanted everything to be solid, so I would question people's motives. And like, these people don't get it, they this. Right. But I realized, man, that as opposed to question people's motives, you got to really do what God told you to do. See, what God told you to do, He telling you to do it for a reason. Yeah. And everybody may not understand it. You just continue doing what God told you to do. Yeah. And like that meme say, till your hustlers till your haters ask you if you hired. Yeah. Period. Like all of the people the people who was naysayers and detractors when they on that positive stuff. It's just.
Now they're here.
Yeah, the difference.
I remember I foresight that 5 years ago. Yeah. 5 years ago, and everybody was laughing at me, and it was like spirituality and this and that. And I was just like, I'm telling you, I'm like, this is a new wave. And I grew up in a religious background. I was into church up into the last 5 years. I grew up very religious. I was a diehard Christian. But it gave me the strength and the foundation that I need. Yes. And I'm still, like, I would never, ever denounce any type of religion or hate anything. Yeah. Like, people need it. So it gave me the spiritual foundation that I needed in order to walk in what I'm walking in now. Yeah. And so the last 5 years, I remember I was telling, like you said, you have your naysayers and you tell them, they're like, no. Yeah. And then they calling me and like, oh my God, Tiffany, you said this and you said that. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm already seeing foresight for the next 5 years because I'm a foreseer. Yeah. So, it's just really interesting how, you go from that point to this point and you be like, you just be wild and amazed at my life. I'm so amazed at my life and the peace that I'm in. And like you said, that agape love, it's like to feel that love within yourself. And a lot of people miss that void within themselves where they're missing that love. Yeah. And so they turn to things on the outside. Like you said, you're going to your neighborhood, you're going to the street, you're finding any type of validation versus looking at it within yourself. And I just love that story. Please tell us about your book and where this came all about. I can't wait to read this.
Look, before I tell you about that book, I got to say this because you said earlier, I'm kind of nervous. But I'm going to say this, right? Out of all of the interviews that I've done, and I've done a lot of interviews. I've done a lot of interviews for 22 years. You are walking in your purpose. Aww. You are your conversation, the flow, the conciseness of thoughts, everything. I'm telling you, like I done did a whole bunch of interviews. Thank you. This is you. I mean, this is you. I'm telling you. I've done a lot of interviews. You dope in this, and you keep the conversation going, and you know.
Thank you.
I just want to say that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm telling you that. I'm like, how she nervous and you carrying this thing. Yeah. So about the book, I wrote this book. To kind of chronicle the journey that I took. I felt like it was something special about the journey and all of the stuff and how it happened. And I wanted it to be. It's a memoir. But I wanted it to be kind of like also a blueprint for anybody else. Maybe your mother that got a son in prison, or brother, her wife that's dealing with someone incarcerated, or maybe you someone in prison trying to figure it out.
Right.
I wrote it in a way, it's not no urban novel, so I ain't write it like that. It's not Donna Gone, the Iceberg Slim. I wrote it to where everyone can appreciate it, whether you're academic or you somebody in the hood.
Right.
You can follow it along and get something for you, right?
Yes.
So that you can say, okay, I see that, I feel that. But it's a journey, and it takes you from the time I was born to a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now. And I'm doing a lot of stuff across the country. My team tell me I don't beat my chest enough, but I grew up when we grew up.
Yes.
I grew up when it was about principles and morals and not this new generation of anything and everything goes.
I'm trying to find my way in it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
This new generation had you lost.
Yeah, I'm
in
just
the sauce,
like,
man.
oh my goodness.
Nothing more important than having principles and morals that you stand on, because that become the boundary of your relationships and your engagement. Like, I don't do nothing with nobody if we're not vision aligned.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We don't have the same vision, we're not aligned.
Same here.
We can't do no business, we can't do nothing, because those principles that my grandparents taught me, integrity, spirituality, all that stuff that defines and gives boundaries, it's all in that book,
Yes, and based off of your stories, you were
I'm
Rory, I can't wait.
That's a good read.
Yeah,
a good read.
I cannot wait. So what's next for you, Mr. Antong?
I just finished, and I'm so excited about this because my book has been doing well. I've been traveling, just got back from Atlanta doing a meet and greet. I'm headed to Pittsburgh. I've been traveling, doing a lot of work, promotional stuff. But I just finished my training called Redemptive Activism, and it's based off the book.
Okay.
I got SMU on board with it to give it the teeth and everything. So I will be training, because I'm an activist. I'm a redemption activist, right? Because I believe in redemption.
Yes.
I believe in that none of us are the sum total of some mistakes we made in the past. That we all can be redeemed.
Absolutely.
And so I believe, like, now in this polarizing culture, that we need this form of activism that's about calling people in versus calling them out. It's screaming on this side, screaming on that side, and you can never move us forward. So it's about solutioning us forward with this book and this training, right? And I want to teach activists, social entrepreneurs, that it's a third way to getting the solution and moving us forward as a country. And so that training is just finished. So after I'm on the board of this organization called Stand Together. We fund 300 organizations across the country.
Wow.
So I'm gonna be training all those organizations with redemptive activists. I'm excited about that.
Yes,
they're paying for it
that
too.
is. That's nice.
So that's key.
I love to travel. Do you like traveling?
I love it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm a part of another organization called Heal America, which was started by Bishop Omar. Okay. And this past summer, it's all about calling people in and how do we move our country forward? How do we address racial injustice? Heal America. And this past summer, we did the Summer of Healing, where we gave $2 million across the country to organizations that's on the ground, bridging the gap between law enforcement and community, which we believe is important, right?
Yes.
So these organizations, 18 organizations, 43 cities, $2 million across the board. And we made it easy for them to get the money, because we wanted it to go to the organizations on the ground that's doing the work that ultimately sometimes don't get the look. They don't get the resources.
Right.
So we just came off that, and now we're talking about the next leg of that. So it's a lot of stuff that's happening that I'm just excited to be a part of.
Yes, that does sound exciting.
Yes, it is.
Please let me know where we can help. Let us know where we can find you.
Yes.
Okay, give us your information where they can find you at.
This is your favorite part right here. Go on Instagram. All social media is Antong Speaks, ANTONG SPEAKS. Antong Speak on all social media. That's my personal, and I'm always posting, and I was verified before the check, so I just want to say that. And then the organization is Urban Specialists, urbanspecialist.org, the Urban Specialist on all social media. You can go check out some work, check out the work that we do across the country. and it'll take you to everything else.
Awesome. And that's where they'll be able to support you at as well.
Support me. Go to Amazon, get that book.
Get the book.
Get the book.
Yes. And his movement. Because this is a movement.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing. It sounds so amazing. This is what we need. It's refreshing. It's what we need, not what we want.
Yes, indeed. Go get that book.
Yes, please.
Wherever they sell books, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Amazon, go pick that book up and leave me a review too. But it's a great book. I got the foreword is by my brother Deion Sanders, who we do a lot of work together. So he did the foreword, great foreword. Go get this book, man. What he doing for HBCUs, I'm doing for black men in our community. I want them to see that you can do it a whole different way. You know, if you stay down, you'll come up. Just
stay consistent.
Stay consistent.
Stay consistent.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It was so nice having you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
I appreciate you.